Hello, and welcome to this webinar on interoception awareness and toileting. I'm Sue Eltringham. Sandra and I are both occupational therapists, and we attended interoception training by Kelly Mahler. Now, the links to her work, resources, and further reading are referenced at the end of this webinar. Sandra and I work within the Autism Team at Kent County Council, and we've predominantly worked with autistic adults without a learning disability. And so we've based this webinar generally on supporting this client group. So the webinar may not be suitable for everyone. However, the strategies can be adapted for anybody who is struggling to interpret their body sensations and emotions. So now that I've introduced myself and you can put a face to a name, I'm going to turn the camera off and continue with the audio only for the rest of the webinar. I'll just pull up the presentation. Okay, now before I go any further, I just want to mention, but in particular for this webinar, we'd recommend that you visit your GP first if you have any concerns around toileting, in particular around pain when urinating, if you found blood in your urine, etc. So your doctor is aware of any conditions and where you can receive medical advice and support if needed. So it's really important that you have a basic understanding of interoception and what this means. So this webinar needs to be watched after you've watched the introduction to interoception webinar. So if you've not seen this one yet, please either click on the link or search for it on YouTube and watch the introduction first and then come back to this one. You may also like to bring a notebook and pen with you, as there's a short activity during the webinar. You may also like to write down any notes or any queries that the webinar brings up for you, and you may want to research these afterwards. So I'm hoping by now you've come back having watched the introduction to interoception, and you'll have learned that interoception helps us manage the way we feel by prompting us to take action based on the body sensations we notice. The majority of us recognise these sensations and have good interoception awareness. Now, the purpose of this webinar is to focus on one area of the body, the bladder, to help you to notice this area of your body and to encourage you to practice to think about how your bladder can feel and how to be able to describe this. So if you have good interoception awareness, you'll not have any problems with recognising if your bladder is full and the need to go to the toilet. Good interoception awareness is vital for independent toileting. You need to be able to notice and connect the body signals involving the need to go to the toilet for a wee, for complete toileting success. However, if you have poor interoception awareness, this can lead to difficulties in this area. So, for example, if you do not notice the sensation that your bladder is full, your brain will not receive the signal to tell you that you need to go to the toilet, which can lead to the problem of a sense of urgency where you need to go to the loo right now and very little warning, or perhaps you might even wet yourself. Interoception awareness helps you to manage the way you feel by prompting you to take action based on the body signals you notice. So step one is to notice how your body feels. So in this case, recognizing the sensations around your bladder and where it is in your body. Step two, to connect what this sensation means, noticing when your bladder is full and recognizing this sensation. Kelly Mahler refers to this step as the emotion, but we feel the word sensation fits better with the people we work with. And step three is to take action when your bladder is full by going to the toilet. And you'll see in step three that I've just added here washing your hands. So although this is not actually part of this action, it's very good to keep these two activities linked together. So if I relay an example from a young man who Kelly Mahler worked with, who after several weeks of working on his interoception awareness, he was able to recognize a new body feeling. He said that he woke up and stated that he had a feeling like he had a big carton of milk on his stomach. But when Kelly asked him what he meant by this, he did not know. So although he was able to notice the body signal, he was not able to connect the signal to the sensation. So for example, if you've got a full bladder, it means it's time to go to the toilet. So if we're working with people on this, we need to help them to notice the body signals, but then also to connect the body signals or sensations to the action and form a response, i.e. go to the toilet. So this webinar is focusing primarily on the body sensations coming from the bladder and noticing this sensation and when you need to go for a wee. However, urinating is just one part of what's needed to be totally independent with toileting. So you may want to research further into a comprehensive interoception-based toileting program. And there's further notes on this and the reading and resources at the end of this webinar. So step 1, noticing body sensations. So it's really important to be aware of where your bladder is in your body. If you're supporting someone, ask them to show you where on their body the bladder is. Can you or the person you're supporting describe feelings around your bladder? How can it feel? So step 2, this is where you may need your pen and paper. So write down the words you might use to describe how your bladder can feel. Now remember that anything or any word is okay as long as it's personal to each individual. So if you're supporting someone and they write down a word to describe their bladder that sounds unusual to you, it's absolutely okay if it's meaningful to that person. So have a go now. Try writing some words down. How does your bladder feel? If you're struggling, here's an example. How does your bladder feel if you had a really big drink? Does it feel full? So can you use that word to describe it? See if you can think of some more words. Pause the webinar here and write down how your bladder can feel. Did you come up with any of these words? My bladder can feel light. My bladder can feel heavy. My bladder can feel okay. My bladder can feel sore. It's a crucial part of learning to have good interoception, to be able to have words that you're comfortable to use that describe the sensation of having a full bladder. Sometimes people can find it very hard to think of words to describe how their bladder can feel. So if you're working with someone or you yourself are struggling to think of words, here's some practical steps and experiments that you just might try to help people think about words. So you could try drinking a large glass of water, wait 30 minutes, and then try to describe how your bladder feels now. You could put your hand on your bladder and gently press. How does that make your bladder feel? You could try lying on the floor, like the image above. You can either have your hands by your side or in front of you. Lie there for about 30 seconds. How does that make your bladder feel? And just remember that even if a body sensation is uncomfortable, so for example, having a full bladder, it's a really helpful sensation. As the sensation the body part is giving us is important information on what we need to do to stay healthy and feel good. So the uncomfortable sensation of a full bladder is the signal to go to the toilet. So if you can use a word to describe the feeling of your bladder, then you can connect this sensation into the action. So remember to think about the 3 steps and linking them together. So step 1, how does your body feel? Step 2, recognize the sensation and what it means. Use one of your describing words. And step 3, take action. Go to the toilet for a wee. So connecting the sensation, full bladder, to going to the toilet, taking the action and going to the toilet. This step comes with lots of practice, especially if you're learning to recognize the body signals of a full bladder and learning how to describe this. So step 3, practical things to try. So it will depend on the individual as to which strategies might be supportive. But the most important thing is to encourage interoception awareness so that you recognize your own body signals and when you feel that your bladder is full. So following and practicing steps 1 and 2 and being mindful of how your body feels. And this can then be used in conjunction with prompts and reminders. So here's some examples and some strategies. If you're supporting younger children, either at school or at home, you might ask them to tell someone the need to go to the toilet when you feel the sensation of a full bladder. That'll depend on the verbal skills or social situation. It might be more appropriate to raise a card or show a picture of a toilet. It might be pointing to a picture of the toilet, especially if there's limited speech. Or it might just be using a pre-arranged signal with the person who's supporting you, indicating the need to go to the toilet. It might just be holding up a picture of a coloured card or holding up their hand. As long as it's mutually agreed between the person and the person supporting them, that they understand what the signal is. You might find it useful to make a visual timetable. Now, using pictures of a toilet and then using the pictures of the toilet on the visual timetable, and this will help support when it is time to go to the toilet throughout the day. For autistic people, it can be important to use a photograph of the exact toilet the person is going to be using. It's not much help showing a printed picture of a toilet from Google Images if this does not represent the toilet that the person recognises. So take a photograph of the school toilet from the child's school or the home toilet from the child's home and make it personal. You may like to research into this further. It's something called context blindness. And there's further resources on this at the end. You may want to use the sample template for the daily routine planner, which can just be a starting point. And again, this is at the end of the webinar. So a simple daily routine planner, and you can write in times to go to the toilet throughout the day. You may want to try using phone reminders or setting alarms to go to the toilet throughout the day. There's also apps with timetables for daily activities. And on the next slide, I'll show you an example of the Handy Calendar app and how this can be used. Another useful strategy to support successful toileting when in a new environment or visiting new places is that you arrange a familiarisation visit so that the toilets and their exact location is known to the person. And this can also help reduce anxiety around toileting. You might find using apps such as one called Flush, and this shows on the local map of the area the nearest toilet to your location. But the most important thing is to practice recognizing the sensation of a full bladder and being able to describe this sensation and to act on it. So this is just a screenshot that I've taken of the Handy Calendar app. There are obviously lots of other apps available, but this example has been set on the daily view on the calendar, and you can see there are two prompts in red, although they do actually look a bit more pink on this slide. But these are in red to highlight the importance of the task, and they've also been set that they are checkable, so that the person had to complete the task and tick it off. And it will keep reminding you that you've not been to the toilet unless you mark it as complete. We found this particularly useful for people who get easily distracted. It's not for everybody, but we've had some excellent success with this with some of the people we've worked with using this as a prompt. Now, on a final note, aside from interoception, signs to the toilet can be confusing for everybody. I think we could all get confused with some of these choices. But if you imagine you're dashing into the toilet with a real sense of urgency, and if you think about it, these signs are just not helpful in certain situations. So it may be something to think about when you're supporting people around their toileting needs. And again, you may want to research further into context blindness, as I mentioned earlier, and the references are on the resources for that. So finally, here's just some resources that you may find useful. Location of the bladder and a blank form to use to describe how your bladder can feel. And here's an example of a daily routine planner, just as a template. You may want to write in the times when the person needs to go to the toilet throughout the day as a prompt. And finally, here is the further reading and resources. And you may also like to watch further webinars in this series. You can search for these, on YouTube. There's interoception and anxiety, interoception, eating and drinking, interoception and temperature and pain, and interoception and sight and sounds. We hope that you found this webinar on interoception awareness and toileting useful. Thank you for listening.